We now know how to multiply whole numbers and decimals. But when solving these problems, you want to be extra careful that we're solving the right way and that we're not getting tricked. So be very careful and don't get tricked. We're going to take a look at a few problems so that you see what I'm talking about here. Let's look at the problem 4.7 times 100. Now this goes back to Unit 1 where we learned how to multiply and divide by tens, hundreds, and thousands. When we're multiplying times 100, our number is going to be 100 times bigger. This means that we want a 100 4.7s. And we know with a number like 32, say we're to do 32 times 10, my answer would be 320 because I have 32 tens. And we're going to be adding a place value. The same thing occurs when we're doing multiplication of a decimal. So 4.7 times 100, we want 100 of those. We have to add 2 place values, and it's going to become 470. So 4.7 times 100 equals 470. Now let's review 4.7 divided by 100. This means we have 4.7 and we want to break that up into 100 parts. So we're going to move our decimal place over 2 spots to the left, and it becomes 0.047. Our number is going to be getting smaller. So it's just the same like with the whole numbers when we did it in the beginning of the year, where if I had the number 3,200 and I wanted to divide that by 100, it needs to be 100 times smaller. So I'm going to be taking 2 place values away. So it's going to become 32. Okay, now let's take a look at some multiplication with decimals times tenths, hundredths, and thousandths. Let's try 4.7 times 0.01. So now I'm multiplying 4.7 times a decimal. 0.01, remember, is the same as, I would read this as 100th, and written as a fraction, it would be written like this, 100th. So this is 4.7 times 100th. So really what I'm finding here is a fraction of 4.7. If I'm finding a fraction of 4.7, that means my answer must be smaller than 4.7. If it's larger, I know that something was off. So I'm doing 4.7 times 0.01, which is the same as saying what is 100th of 4.7. If I were to make that as a bar model, my whole would be 4.7. And then this is saying I want to know what 100th of that is, so I'm going to break this up into 100 tiny little pieces, and we'll just pretend that I've drawn 100 up here. And I want to know what 100th of 4.7 is, so I want to know what is 1 part of that whole. So though I'm multiplying times a fraction. So that's why my number is going to be getting smaller. So in this case, we're multiplying times 0.01. My decimal place, I have to account for 2 place values, hundredths place. So my decimal place is going to move 2 spots over to the left. I'm going to get 0.047. Let's take a look at one more. We have 4.7 divided this time by 0.01. Now remember, same thing, 0.01 is the same as 1 over 100. So we cannot have a decimal as our divisor. We have to make this number whole, remember. So if I were to write this, and remember that this division sign is the same as a fraction bar, right? So let's look at it like this over here. 4.7 divided by, see these are the same, divided by 0.01. Now I have to make this number whole. I have to make my dividend whole because I can't divide by a decimal. that means that I'm going to need to multiply it by 100, times 100. Well, if I'm multiplying my denominator times 100, I'll get 1, but that means I must also multiply my numerator times 100. 4.7 times 100, move 2 places over, will become 470. So 4.7 divided by 0.01 is 470. So I'm just reviewing the reasons why when we're dividing our number's getting bigger, or when we're dividing by a decimal our number gets bigger, and when we're multiplying by a decimal our number gets smaller. Because many of us memorize the rule. Oh, well, if I'm multiplying, I'm moving to the left, and if I'm dividing, I'm moving to the right. Well, that's great, and we want to remember that, but that is only for decimals, only when multiplying by decimals. It's not going to change what happens when we multiply and divide by whole numbers. Multiplying and dividing by whole numbers is staying just the same as it's always been. So, if you take a look here at these problems that we solved, and now I'll erase some of this mess here. If we take a look at these problems, you'll see that when I multiply 4.7, times 100, and I get 470, that's similar to saying 4.7 divided by 0.01. We get the same answer. So the reason our number is getting bigger is because when we're dividing by 0.01, remember, we have to actually make this number whole. So what are we actually doing? We must multiply times 100. So you'll see that that's why you're getting the same answer. So you can remember those rules for decimals. We want to know them, but we want to remember that when multiplying times 10, 100, and 1,000, we're going to treat those just the same as we always have. If I'm multiplying 63 times 1,000, my number is going to be getting much larger because I have 63 thousandths. So it should be the same as we've always practiced. If I have 63 times 0.001, that's a different story because now I'm finding 1,000ths of 63. So my number is going to be getting smaller. And I'm 1/1000th of it. So I'm going to move my decimal place 1, 2, 3 spots to the left. So my answer would be 0.063. So tonight for homework, we're reviewing these problems. I'm mixing them all together for you so that you can try to practice solving these problems and catch yourself if you're accidentally mixing them up. I want you to be very careful to not get tricked, okay? Think about what these problems actually mean. All right? Bring the handout back in with you tomorrow, and we'll be sure to go over them as a class.